So you have recently applied for a spousal sponsorship for your better half, either living outside Canada or already with you in Canada, and you're wondering at this point on what happens next. A lot of the applicants today have no idea about what are the steps and processes that an application goes through after the paper application is sent over to the processing center in Nova Scotia. Also, I see people wondering what are they supposed to wait for, expect, and prepare for in future. So let's talk about all that in this video, where I will take you through a step-by-step procedure on what your application goes through at each stage on its way to the ultimate decision that you all wait for, that is PPR. Hello guys, welcome back to my channel Canadian Desi, where I cover immigration related topics in my videos, today being specifically for the spousal sponsorship. This video might get a little bit long, but bear with me as I will be explaining all the stages of your application in great detail, but in as little time as possible. The first thing that you need to know is where does your spousal application goes in the first place to start with. So as mentioned by this website here, if your spouse lives outside of Canada, then you're supposed to mail your application to the case processing center in Sydney, Nova Scotia. However, if your spouse currently resides with you in Canada, then you're required to mail their application to this address in Mississauga. Please note, sponsoring from within Canada is mostly applicable for the permanent residents of Canada who are required to be physically present in Canada to be able to sponsor their partner. But if you're a Canadian citizen, you get an option to either sponsor your partner from outside or within Canada. So if you're currently living out of Canada, you're required to send your application to the Canadian Embassy, High Commission, or Consulate, whoever is responsible for the processing of such applications in your country or your area. Okay, so once they have received your application, what is the next thing that you're required to do? Nothing. All you have to do is just wait for the processing centers to do a completeness check on your application. So what happens is that the officer at the IRCC goes through your application and checks if all the required important documents, translations forms, and mandatory signatures are provided by both the applicant and the sponsor. To have a better understanding of the documents that are required to sponsor your partner in Canada, you can check out this video that I posted earlier. This video is an ultimate guide and covers each and every aspect in a detailed format about which documents were submitted by myself in sponsoring my wife. It also includes some useful information that you might not find anywhere else, so go check out that whole video. Okay, getting back to the topic, so once the officer does a completeness check and verifies that the application is complete, they issue an Acknowledgement of Receipt letter, or mostly called the AOR1 letter, that is emailed to either you or your authorized representative. There's another AOR, which is the AOR2 that you receive in the upcoming stages, which we will talk about soon. So you need to understand here is that this first step is very crucial for a successful processing of your application. The thing is, you have to make sure that you're not missing anything, not even a single signature, before you send out your application. This is because there has been a very high volume of applications that are being returned back to the applicant, all because of minor errors like signature or a document missing, or the PCC is not in colored format and all that. Back when I applied for my wife's sponsorship in April 2020, there were a lot of news coming out that people are having their files sent back to them for incompleteness of documents or missing signatures, even though it was mentioned by the IRCC that they were not going to return applications for such slight mistakes. So be very careful, even if you have hired an immigration lawyer, because they tend to do blunders as well. Just double check twice or even 3 times to make sure that it's fully complete and signed. So the AR1 email that the IRCC sends you will contain this information. On confirmation that they have received their package and that the application is complete, an application number that usually starts with an F, which can be used to track progress or to have updates from the IRCC. I will put a link in the description below that can be used to check the status of your application. Please note, if you have already hired a representative on your behalf, they will be able to link your application through the application number on their portal account, and that way they will be able to provide you all the important updates related to your account. However, if you yourself want to have updates for your application, you can create your own portal, but that way your hired representative will lose all the access to that account because there can only be one account holder at a time. So please be aware of that. In the next stage, upon further processing, you're sent a biometrics instruction letter, which is also popularly known as the BIL. So this letter basically is sent by the IRCC requesting the principal applicant to take the letter to a biometrics collection center and provide them their fingerprints and photos. This letter is also an indication that the applicant has already paid for the biometric fees in advance while paying for the rest of their application. The biometric fees is Canadian $85. If you previously visited Canada or are already living in Canada, then the IRCC most probably already have your biometrics, hence you don't need to go for a biometric session or pay for it. The rest of the application fee costs Canadian $1,050, and along with biometric fees it comes to around Canadian $1,135. And please note, normally you are provided 30 days from the receipt of this letter to go and give your biometrics, but today in the times of pandemic, the time limit goes on and off to 60 days as well. Okay, now let's talk about the next stage. This is the stage where the officer determines whether or not the sponsor is even eligible to sponsor their spouse or partner in Canada. Now, this is decided based on a variety of factors. The first and foremost being, will they be able to take care of their partner financially? In other terms, they verify the sponsor's income, the amount of money that they already have in possession, are they employed or unemployed, and all that stuff. Secondly, they look at the sponsor's status in Canada, that is the sponsor even legally entitled to sponsor his or her loved one in Canada? So looking at all these factors, they come up with the decision and send out a sponsor approval letter that states that the sponsor has met the eligibility requirements to be a sponsor. Later, you also receive an approval in principle letter from IRCC, which is also known as the AIP. So just like the sponsor approval letter defines that the sponsor has met the requirements, the AIP letter indicates that the principal applicant or the person who is being applied to come to Canada has also met the requirements to be sponsored in the first place. So this is the stage where the officer looks at the genuinity of your relationship. They look at all the proofs, pictures, and evidences that you send along with your application to support your relationship. But please note that this approval does not mean that your application has been fully approved. But at this stage, you can almost take a breath of relief that the hardest stages of your application have passed. The CSE also specifies that they would also require applicants' medical and background checks at a later stage to be able to completely process the application. Now, here comes the next stage where the IRCC works on the rest of the procedure to be able to ultimately decide whether you will be able to land in Canada and meet your spouse or not. First, they ask you for a PCC or the police clearance certificate. So this certificate is basically issued by the principal applicant's home country, verifying and stating that they have not found any criminal or illegal activities under their name. This is a very important document that is used by the IRCC to make sure that the applicant is free of any charge or conviction before they are allowed to enter Canada. Also, please note that the applicant is required to submit a PCC of all the countries where they have stayed for more than 6 months within the last 10 years. So if you're a traveler by hobby, it is recommended to gather all the PCCs as early as possible before you even start preparing for your application. And make sure you're not waiting for the IRCC to request you for a PCC. Just submit it along with the rest of your application and make sure all of them are original and in colored format. Another important thing, so as you may know, this PCC is considered one of the most important documents for the success of your application. There are a lot of other important documents and stuff that you need to submit as well to get the desired results. To cover all that, I've already made a video right here which talks in detail about a complete checklist of the documents that I submitted in my wife's application. So go check that out. Okay, remember we talked about the AOR1? Now let me tell you what an AOR2 exactly is. So as you see, you first send your application to the Nova Scotia Processing Center in Sydney, but once you pass the sponsor approval stage, the upcoming processing is not done by the same office. It is instead sent over to a different office, either overseas or within Canada. The officer sends out the second letter that states that where application is being transferred to for further processing. It's not really straightforward thing that if your application was submitted outside of Canada, then the next visa office will also be outside Canada. It mainly depends on how complex your file is. Do you have dependents that need to be verified? Does your relationship proof need authentication before further processing? Did you have any impending conviction or criminal activity on your records? And all that stuff. Basically, an application that is free of such hurdles are processed further within Canada, and all others are sent to the overseas visa offices, mostly where the applicant resides. Now, this is my own personal view to this whole scenario. Some people may agree to that and some might not. From my own experience, me and one of my friends both submitted application from within Canada, but my friend's application ended up getting transferred to his home country. That took more time to move ahead, whereas my application was further processed in Ottawa. So basically, it all depends upon the complexity of your file. Okay, so once they have conducted the police check on the principal applicant, the next thing that they request is the medicals. So just like the biometrics and sponsor approval letter, a medical request letter is issued by the IRCC requesting the principal applicant, obviously, to conduct a medical examination. The letter states that all the info about when are you supposed to undergo the medical examination and within what time frame, who are authorized to conduct this physical examination. So this letter provides a link that you can visit for a full list of authorized panel physicians in your area that you may visit, how to complete the medical examination, how to pay for it, and basically all the info that you will be in need for before going for a medical examination. Remember, the medical exam fee is separate from the other fees that you pay in advance before sending out your application. This fee is required to be paid on-site at the panel physician's clinic. The second page shows the applicant's information like the name, country of birth, date of birth, address, and all such basic info. This letter is kept and used by the panel physician to further process your medicals and directly send it over to the IRCC. Once the medical is done and submitted, the next procedure that the officer starts looking at is the security aspect of the applicant. Basically, IRCC verifies and makes sure that the applicant does not pose a threat to the national security of the nation. At this stage, there are 3 security agencies that work together to fully conduct this operation. The first is obviously IRCC, second being the Canadian Border Services Agency, and thirdly, the Canadian Securities Intelligence Services. Once this all is done, the officials decide on whether or not they should conduct an interview with the applicant. Normally, 1 out of 10 cases are usually called for an interview, and the ones who are chosen are mainly the couples that IRCC think have a slight suspicion in the genuineness and history of the relationship. So I always recommend to keep yourself away from an interview call. Try to show all the proofs you think are suitable to demonstrate the genuineness of your relationship. People who try to beat the system by letting through a fake relationship often get beaten themselves. Okay, now is the stage where you finally get to taste your main goal, only if everything went well in the previous stages. This is the step where you get the passport request letter by email, popularly known as the PPR. This works as an official confirmation on behalf of the IRCC that all the documentation and proofs that you've spent days and nights working on have finally bear the fruit. At this point, you're required to do one thing: leave everything behind and party. Congratulations, you or your spouse are almost the permanent resident of Canada. To finish the procedure, you are required to send your passport to the nearby visa processing center in your home country along with 2 passport photos. These days, the passports can only be mailed to the visa centers, and neither can you visit the center or drop off the passport yourself. And what you get back is a COPI, which is the confirmation of permanent residence, and a visa stamp in your passport, which usually stays valid for 6 months, within which you are required to land in Canada. So this was the whole procedure of the spousal sponsorship application, right from the moment you mailed it out all the way to the most awaited PPR and lending. Let me know any of your questions related to this topic in the comment section below, and if you like it, please give it a thumbs up. And if you would like to see more of my upcoming videos on this topic, then hit that red subscribe button that is popping up on your screen. I post videos every week. Subscribing means you won't miss out on any of my video. Also, let me know what other videos should I be making and presenting to you in future. Until next week, see you again on Canadian Desi.